So next we have a roundtable session about clinical practice. One size does not fit all. We have a 4-person panel, so we're going to move quickly. But first up is Dr. Mercedeh Baghai, who's a general and minimally invasive surgeon at Torrance Memorial Medical Center in California. She represents the rare bird these days of the solo private practice surgeon. Our second panelist is Dr. Nicole Fearing, who is the medical director of bariatrics at Menorah Medical Center in Kansas City. She is in independent academic practice, although she's also been in private practice, and she has started multiple programs on her own, yet maintained an academic interest. Dr. Steve Schwaitzberg is our third panelist. He is the professor and chairman of surgery at the University of Buffalo School of Medicine. He has multiple accomplishments, but he is a past president of SAGES, for which I think is most appropriate here, and he is representing the academic university surgeon. And then finally, Kevin Wasco, who is a partner in Surgical Associates of Fox Cities. He's also the cancer committee chair for his medical practice and a medical director of bariatrics. And he's an adjunct clinical professor at the University of Wisconsin in Marquette, who is a private practice surgeon in a multi-specialty group. So thank you all for being here. We're going to move through some questions, but first, during the course of this session, we're going to poll the audience on some topics. So if we can have the first poll question, please, to be up while we're doing this. So what I'd like to ask the group first is, did you pick your current type of practice intentionally? If so, why? Or did you kind of fall into a job? And with this type of practice, is there some benefits and challenges that you want to talk about? And was your decision based on things like practice type, practice location, or practice size? Start with Mercedeh.
Hi, good morning. First, I want to thank for being on this panel. This is exciting. No, I did not pick this intentionally. After fellowship, I joined a big surgical group, about 17 surgeons. And within the first year, I realized this was not for me. I had too many bosses. I was asked to do too much, and a lot of it was unnecessary work. But I loved the area I was in. I really liked the area. I had fostered a lot of relationships and didn't want to leave. So when I actually decided one day on a whim to leave, and it was truly on a whim, I decided on a Sunday, and Monday left, and gave my notice, but they were threatened that I was going to steal patients. So we parted ways cordially, but I literally found myself with options of what to do. And there were a lot of people in this community that supported me and encouraged me to actually open my own practice. I had been in the community for 3 years. I had a good reputation and a very strong referral base. And so I literally went to Kinko's, printed some cards, went to Sprint, bought a cell phone, went to UPS store, opened the mailbox, and that was my practice. I started seeing patients that afternoon, literally. The challenges, there were a lot of challenges. Is that what you asked, challenges? There were a lot of challenges, but the biggest thing was that I had no idea what I was doing. I was learning it on the fly, but I was confident that I could do the surgical part and the patient management, and the rest of it I figured if you're honest and ethical, you'll figure it out as well.
Okay, thank you. Nicole.
Same question. I think I kind of fell into it. Obviously, as you know, I left from academic practice and had to move my practice because my husband moved his practice to Kansas City and had his dream job. And so I had to change my dream job for his. And so fell into a practice that wasn't a great practice and left that practice for something that I had to build. So I was just really flexible and kind of was open to what happened, and it became a really, really good thing. And I think the biggest challenge, kind of like Mercedeh was saying, was just trying to figure out how to do it on my own and how to negotiate on my own and build it all by myself. And it's worked out really, really well.
So I completely fell into it. I'm a failed pediatric surgery candidate, and I was working in a device laboratory and stumbled on a methodology with some collaborators to microwave blood. And as a result, we got some federal funding, and the chair of the department said, you can apply again. At the time, there were only 14 or 15 programs, or you can have a faculty job. So I found myself building devices. He sent me to the prison hospital as my first clinical job. But I found myself with a device building laboratory at a time when laparoscopic surgery came along, and the rest was history for me in technology and academics. I said I was going to give it 5 years, and if I was unsuccessful, go into practice, but I'm still chipping away at it.
Are there some specific challenges to academics, do you think?
Yeah, there's a time commitment. You know, we travel too much, and early on, I took sort of the Mark Talamidi approach. I belong to the Society of Critical Care Medicine and all these other societies. And when my kids were born, my younger two kids were born, I decided to focus, and I basically didn't cancel memberships, but I stopped going to every meeting but SAGE's and raised my hand to volunteer for as much as I could. And that gave me the focus to not be traveling quite so much at a time when it was really critical to be not just a good surgeon, but a good parent as well.
Let's pull up the second poll everywhere question. And Kevin, what's your answer to this first question?
Well, I totally stumbled into it too. My first mentor was Dr. Belzer of Organ Preservation Solutions. So I was originally going to be a transplant surgeon. And then the last, and I'd done research, done procurements for him, done everything it took to kind of head that route. And then a funny thing happened. I stumbled upon a mandatory rotation my fourth year when I had to go back actually home to a called rural tract, our community tract for both, and half of it I could spend in surgery. And I went back home and went in the community surgery program for 4 weeks, and I loved it from that moment on. So I think that's what really convinced me. So I could have been doing transplant, and I went into community surgery.
When you've found a job, it sounds like a bunch of the panelists have been through different jobs, and I think a lot of us experience that. Did anybody use any other kinds of services to help job hunt, like a headhunter, or was it mostly word of mouth? How do you find out about a job for the younger people in the audience?
Well, it really doesn't apply to me, except for my first job. I did find my first job, and I thought I was really creative about it. I knew where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Los Angeles, literally a few zip codes. I didn't even want to go outside of LA. I had elderly parents, and I wanted to be close. And I never trained in Southern California, so I had no idea how to network and find jobs down there. And unfortunately, there's literally no resource. At some point in my career, I thought I'd create that resource. But so I actually approached my reps. Any of you guys who are in training interact with a lot of reps, and they have counterparts in all over the country. So I actually talked to a lot of my local reps in fellowship, which was in Atlanta, found their counterparts in Los Angeles, talked to those people and asked them, who are the reputable surgical groups? I really didn't want to join a hack, and I really was very careful about that, and I highly recommend that. If you're going into private practice, you don't know what you're getting into, you really need to weed it out. It's like a marriage. And so once I found out the 3 or 4 reputable groups, then I cold called them. I literally got their phone off the internet, called them. I said, I'm graduating, this is my qualifications, I want a job. I didn't care what they paid, I only cared about the zip code. And that's how I found my first job, which ended up being the best group in the county. It was just not for me. The rest of it, I figured it out. I did hire professionals when I opened my own practice, literally, because you don't know what you're doing. And I do give a talk later this afternoon about that, but don't be shy. I mean, we're experts at surgery. We have no idea about law. We have no idea about business, no matter how many business courses you go. So there are professionals for every aspect of what we do. There are attorneys, there are billers, there are coders, and seek them out. Don't be shy. Spend a little money that you have to. Do it right from the get-go. Otherwise, you'll regret it later down the line.
I think a lot of innovative thoughts on that and great advice. Thank you.
So for the same question, I did the same thing that Mercedeh did, so I'm kind of ditto on you. I did talk to the reps a lot just to find out who was, who to stay away from, who to go with. I also, when I was a fellow, I went to one of the fellows courses and met people, and that's how I got my first job at Mizzou. And so, but I felt like the reps were invaluable. And then for us, I grew up in North Dakota. I did not want to live in North Dakota and be that cold again. And I decided like the middle of the country was as far north as I was ever going to get. So, and again, my husband had his dream job in Kansas City as a pediatric spine surgeon, and it was a great job for him. So I knew I had to be in the area, and went that way with it.
Sadly, I never applied for a job till I was almost 50, and but I've hired more than 50 surgeons, so I understand the process. I think when you're looking at academic jobs, there's a lot of word of mouth, or there will be a SAGES posting or a job board posting, and you'll get a call from somebody and say what's the deal. But the other interesting phenomenon is that in my current job, I was contacted by a headhunter, and I had, when my kids were younger, I didn't want to move, so I turned down a lot of opportunities. But when I finally decided that I was ready to leave Boston, going through the full process of multiple rounds and recruiting was very stressful. And in fact, I was actually turned down for the job that I currently have because my promotion to full professor hadn't been finalized. Harvard is a very convoluted and complicated process. It takes a long time, and so it had been processed but not awarded, so I didn't put it on my CV. So they said no, and when I finally, this is my one piece of advice, if you don't get the job you're looking for, ask what you could do to improve your portfolio. So I said, what's wrong with my CV, which was like 40 pages? And so they said, nothing, but you're not a full professor. And I go, that's the problem. And they go, yeah. And they said, well, I'm about to be promoted in 3 months. And they said, well, we'll get right back to you. So I got an interview and the job for being no different a person other than a title change. And so my one piece of advice, if you're really looking to an academic job, take promotion seriously. It really does make a difference. I wouldn't be sitting here in my current job if I hadn't asked the question, how could I have improved my portfolio? And so that's the advice I give everybody. Take your promotion seriously and ask how you can improve your application if you don't get what you want.
For me, I took a look at my interests, minimally invasive surgery and endoscopy, and got involved with organizations early. I was involved with both ASGE and SAGES early, even before I finished. And then I kind of decided what kind of practice I would envision, and I then took a look at the options I had, including the one I had worked at back home where I live. And that ended up being a great fit. So I didn't have to use a headhunter either. I kind of fell into a good position.
Can we have the next poll question? So, are you happy with your lifestyle? With this kind of job, are you happy with the amount that you work? Do you have control over your call schedule? How important are your partners? And do you have any control over your partners, or is it more of a kind of a mutual arrangement?
So I have no partners, so yes, I have 100% control over that. I am very happy, way more happier than when I was ever employed. But I do have a very rough lifestyle. There is no sugarcoating that. I am on call 100% of the time, 365 days a year, and have been so for 10 years. But it's my own patient, so you control that. So even though it sounds ghastly, I don't get called because I plan accordingly. You become a very good time manager, and I wasn't the best one. I'm still not on certain aspects of my life, but on running my practice, I am very good at knowing when to do surgery, not to do big cases before you're leaving town, so you don't have to fly back. I control all of that, and that gives me a lot more flexibility to live the lifestyle that I want to live. I have no designated numbers of days off. I work when I want, don't when I don't. I go on as many vacations as I want in a year, but I do work hard when I'm there. Sometimes I'm working till midnight every day of the week. and take call in the middle of the night every day of the week. And that's okay. That's a compromise you put up with if you decide to do this solo private practice thing.
And I know for a fact you have multiple seasons tickets.
Yes, I support every athletic team in Los Angeles County. Anyone want a ticket to anything, call me.
So I love my life. I think this is my favorite job that I've had, and partly because I got to morph it into what it was. And so it was hard when I first started because I was solo for the first 3.5 years, and I missed my old partners, and that part was hard, but I got to make it what I wanted. So the hours I set were mine. I made it so if I wanted to go to take my kids to school, I could do it in the morning. I could work as late as I want. I set the days that I got to operate, and the hospital let me do that, and I was lucky to have that luxury. And then they also okayed when I knew I needed partners. It took me stumping for it and really showing value added to the institution, but they let me do that. And they've also let me create the strategic plan for growth. So it took a lot of, I didn't know how to do that. I've done a lot of leadership stuff, read a lot of books, and they bought into it. And so I've been really lucky to do that. So it's a bit of a trade-off, and part of it is when you have this type of practice, you always also have to realize when to pull back, and I'm really bad at realizing when to pull back. We are a kind of eat what you kill practice, so if I'm really busy, I do well. If I take a bunch of time off, then I've got to make it up on the backside, which many of you also may do that, and you've just got to pick your battles and figure out what works for you and your family.
So I love my job. And if you take a job like this, it's because you have chosen to be a servant leader. And I've had great partners who've allowed me to do the things I do. When I was SAGES president, I was all over the world in every continent but Antarctica. I took a pay cut that year because I was traveling. For the last 14 years, I've been on a fixed salary. Even though I operate clinically, I never wanted to be motivated by another gallbladder or another hernia at a time that I was supposed to be making somebody else successful. Being in charge is very different than choosing to be a leader of your organization. I would never want to just be in charge, and there's people here from my organization, so they know I'm telling the truth, that my goal is to make other people successful, and if that's not your goal, this is the wrong job. So my kids are out of school, my wife is the associate dean for curriculum, we're all over the place, and yet I have total control of my schedule because I'm in charge. But I take calls still once a month to be in the trench with the people. And it was a long road to really feel comfortable that I didn't need to be the busiest surgeon anymore. And if you like this kind of life, it's a great opportunity.
I love my practice too. I love the community I live in. It's where I grew up, which has some challenges with it too, but I have a great group of collegial surgeons. It was kind of set up stepwise where a new surgeon joined every couple of years, so it was really collegial building on each generation. And it's all set up along with a good hospital system. I'm private, but I consider my private. I'm intertwined but not owned. So one of us is on the board, one of us is on runs a trauma service, one of us runs I run bariatric, run cancer, and surgical quality, and so we're really involved with the community, and that's another part of practice I like. I like the fact that I'm in a small community. It takes me 5 minutes to get to work, but it still has all the bells and whistles because we have a huge foundation. It's a great place to practice, so I'm real happy with our practice. But it's still busy, like Mercedeh said. We're still private practice, and you still have to work to outwork the own surgeons.
So we'll take the next poll question, and let's go backwards now. Kevin, we'll start with you. What's your involvement in the financial aspect of your practice? Are you able to influence the billing and coding? How much feedback do you get? Is it transparent? Does everybody in your practice know what everybody else makes?
Our practice is a little bit different than what Nicole said. We're actually pretty transparent, and it's actually set up to be almost a sharing. It's like 50-50, so you still have some incentive to work, but everything else is transparent. I'm intimately involved with the financial thing. For SAGES, I do CPT, so I do coding and know the whole process there and work with that. And involved with our coders and billers and actually help the other ones make sure that we're collecting everything we've earned. So I'm involved with that. I'm also involved in a lot of the different financial committees, new technology committees and innovation stuff in the hospital. So I think you have to be to succeed in this day and age.
Well, you can't be a surgery chair and not be involved in the finances. In my first job, we were an employed model and we were an ACO, so I learned a lot about ACO when ACO was very new. I learned a lot about the difference between RVUs and fee-for-service. And when I got to Buffalo, my first task was completely renovate the finances because they weren't transparent, they were a black box, they were frankly unfair. And I built a financial model where every partner in the practice could actually look up every single piece of financial information, including my salary. And I had to make some very hard decisions. I had to move hundreds of thousands of dollars away from people who frankly didn't deserve it and create a system that would be fair. As a result, we've grown from 16 surgeons to 42 surgeons in 3 years. And we're doing well. When I got there, we were 100% fee-for-service. And I've shifted about 70% of the business to contracting with a variety of different health systems to a more predictable financial model for surgeons. I found it appalling that a surgeon could do a 4-hour laparotomy in the middle of the night and get nothing, and wanted to put an end to that. So in our trauma center, we were able to do county contracts as well. We have a good but not an amazing RVU rate because in Buffalo the cost of living is a little bit less. But our goal is to be surgeon-centric. I'm concerned that the surgeons that are in the onesies and twosies, if the market is of any size, will be cut up by the payers. And so we're amassing surgeons to be too big to fail and to be the group that they have to deal with in the region for the future changes in value-based healthcare in American surgery.
Nicole?
So I work for a hospital organization and I'm hospital employed. So there's not a lot of transparency by what people get paid. And so I'm the facility lead though. So for my practice, I monitor like people's RVUs and that kind of thing. So I get to see a little bit more than what everyone else does. But it's really, they don't like to talk about it. They say everyone's paid by fair market value and MGMA standards, but we all know that there's a lot of subjectivity to that, and especially in bariatrics, there's a lot. Billing and coding is a big deal. For our organization, they centralized it and took our billers and coders out of our offices, so we don't get a lot of say in that. And so I have a really amazing office manager who doesn't like to be told no, so she does a lot of deep dives in what we're doing, and we find out that their billing and coding isn't always great. So I have to spend a lot of time, we all have to spend a lot of time going, you know, you bill this as a paraesophageal, but it's an inguinal hernia, and it's totally different. And that part's been frustrating. And so if you're somewhere where you don't know, you really need to ask those questions. And sometimes it's hard to ask those questions. They feel like you're being aggressive or too assertive, but you really need to do that. Partly because it's your livelihood, and partly because if they're billing incorrectly, it always comes back on you at some level. But I really feel very strongly we need to get paid for the work that we do. And if our organizations aren't doing that, we need to question why they're not doing that and stick up for ourselves. So I don't mind being called aggressive if it's done for the right reason.
So I do have obviously control over the finances of my practice, but it has become challenging. I've been doing this now for 10 years, and I can tell you it's a lot harder today than it was 10 years ago, even though at that time I didn't know what I was doing. The billing and coding part has been a huge challenge. I've been in 10 years through 4 billers, and I'm looking for the 5th one. They always get things wrong. At the beginning, I had a lot of extra time, so I literally coded and opened every EOB. I, posted every EOB on my own computer and kept track of what they're doing. And I notoriously every week found big ghastly mistakes. And I had to go back and cause tension with the biller. But now I don't have time for that, and that becomes a problem because no matter who your biller is, they literally got a certificate on an online course with no graduate degree, probably not even a high school degree, and they're determining your livelihood. So you absolutely have to oversee that. I think it's really wrong that none of us get any education in this coming out into the real world. And that has to be changed in graduate medical education. From the call standpoint, I do take call, and we do see a lot of free patients through the ER. Legislature is changing on a daily basis, and we're getting paid less and less, and we're expected to do more and more for free. And this model is not sustainable long term. And honestly, as a solo practice person, I feel I don't have a voice in changing that. Even though I can scream really loud, I don't know how to do it and where to do it and how to be heard. We get free patients coming through the ER all the time. They're not allowed to be sent away to the county hospital. And the law, at least in California, is that we're not allowed to bill and charge anyone for that. I don't know how that can possibly be the law, but it is. And so we do a lot of free work. And, if anyone knows how to change that, please direct me.
Let's put up the final question. We have gone just a little over our time, and I want to thank our panel. This has been a great session. Thank you very much.